Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for joining the session and spending your time. I hope that you will find it rewarding. Just to set the expectations, what is the presentation about? What you're going to see is, let's say, not the complete platform. It cannot fit in 15 minutes, of course, but let's say the visualization element that we use. So frankly, it's about an open source tool that we use to visualize our data and that help us make decisions. And I have the question already for the audience is, how many of you do you use Apache Superset? One, I see one, okay. You don't use, but have you heard about Apache Superset? Okay, that's better. Okay, right, so that is all about. I'm going to actually show you Apache Superset in the next few slides. The concept is just to introduce you to the tool. I think it's a very nice tool, and maybe if you are around data, you should explore it. Right, so starting with that, I'm Argiris Mokios. I am CEO at Kivos. I'm an engineer, an electrical engineer. I have a family, wife, 2 kids. I always wondering about things, the why part of the things, of course, not in a sense theoretical, but in an applied sense. And the fun fact is that I still use a pencil, not behind my ear. I'm not a carpenter, right? But then again, I like that. So a few things about Kivos is, why we do things. We definitely believe that things can be done better, and the industry we're working is the retail industry, which is it's really huge in the sense of it accounts about 30% of the global GDP, which means that the retail is a huge employer, consumer of natural resources, maybe having some gas emissions there. So we think that if we improve that and make it better, then we can help environment and society as well. So in order to do that, we need to innovate in terms of how retailers work. So we need to create some innovative processes around that. And while saying that, I would like to note that in general, we have seen that as humans, we tend to oversimplify things because it's easier for us to comprehend them. But in reality, when you oversimplify methods and processes, you're losing the real factor of it, and in the end, it doesn't work. So we don't have an issue being the guys in the room that says that no, we disagree with what's really happening in general. So in order to apply these processes, we need to develop platforms and tools, and this is what we do. In today's landscape, there are numerous technologies, programming languages, frameworks. And it was really hard for us when we switched to the latest generation of our platform to select what to use. And the dangerous part there is that there is so many things out there, and there is a lot of marketing as well. So not everything works, especially in production scale. So it was really hard for us to pick and choose what will be the new bits and pieces of the platform. It doesn't mean that what we have selected is the best one, but at least it was proofwritten with a huge volume of data. Okay, so what's the problem we're trying to solve? At least one of the problems is that our platform is a decision support system. It helps you make decisions. The decisions we make are at a very low level, so they get to be a lot, maybe hundreds, thousands of those. So if you're going to make those decisions and you need to actually provide it to your customer to operate the network, you need to be efficient, and you need to make sure that you don't ship garbage to your customers. So which means that when you have the decisions and you need to evaluate them, right? It cannot be blindsided. When there are thousands of those, you're either going to have an army of people working at that, either you have to bring the technology in help to make that decisions, and time matters in these situations. So Superset comes into play when we say about reviewing and adjusting and approving. We need it apart from all the other stack of the technology, the databases, the frameworks to communicate, to transform the data. You also need to visualize it, right? So Superset, as seen on the website, I mean, this information is not mine, it's exactly from the Superset website. It is a flexible platform, is an Apache project. It's very flexible, it has very nice technology behind that. It has a big community. And what really helps you is it's flexible in the sense of you can easily visualize your data. Sometimes you don't even have to, do any kind of SQL queries around that. You can go through the UI. You're going to see a few bits and pieces in the next few slides. It integrates with a lot of databases. I think probably most, if not all. I mean, even new modern ones. It has a nice architecture, and of course, the visualization layer is based on eCharts. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's also another Apache project, which is actually, very, let's say, flexible. So we mentioned Superset, but then again, Superset probably is not the only solution out there, right? So what was the other options? Let's say for us, the main contenders, as you can see on screen. Of course, there are commercial tools like Tableau, Power BI, and then other somehow open source solutions like Redas. So there are many solutions. I mean, of course, we didn't go through to evaluate all of these. Otherwise, we will be stuck in an endless loop, right? But half of those we did, as I said, in scale to see if they can perform. One of the reasons, and it helped us out to make sure that we are in the right direction, was to see who else is using it. For example, for Superset, you can see Airbnb, American Express, Lyft, and of course Dropbox. And if you do a simple query, Dropbox and Superset, you're going to find a very nice piece of article that says why they have chosen it, and it is a comparison with half of the tools I'm mentioning in my slide. So if you're thinking about Superset, I would do that query and look why, for example, Dropbox did that. For us, it fit the pieces of scalability. It was a main concern for us because, as I told you, we're talking about 1,000, but then again, the 1,000 decisions come from millions and billions of data behind that, so you might need to aggregate and visualize that, so you need some kind of scalability. Of course, open source. Open source means that it's not about the cheap part, because open source is not free in the sense of a company that needs to be in production scale. You need to invest and give back to the community. So you need to also do the bug fixes and maybe extend. That's why we wanted an open source solution, because we need to be able to intervene and do all things on top of it. And of course, it has a nice modern stack, technologies that, around the web that are very, cutting edge currently. So, going away from the introduction, I will get you through, let's say, how do we build a dashboard? I mean, the dashboard is something that, you hear it here and there, everywhere. So, ideally, it takes you, very short time to develop a dashboard in our case. So what we see on screen is a dashboard from our application, what we want to do. Of course, it doesn't make much more sense because it's without context, but think about it, in these nice visualizations, they're not fake, they're real. They help somebody quickly visualize when you, let's say, have some thousands of orders per day to see, okay, what am I ordering for my network, for example, and it gives you an aggregated view. So if you see on the screen, we have two tabs here. It's a simple dashboard, right? But then again, it's very easy to build and visualize. So we'll focus, for example, how we would add an element like this on the bottom of the screen, which is a time series representation of some information. For this example is actuals versus, let's say, stock on hand, what I have available. And I would like to show you how you're going to build this element on the module. So I want to go back to how you can install Apache Superset. It doesn't make sense. You can easily find it, the information out there. What I'm going to focus is that having Superset in place, which has an architecture of its own, it's interesting to see that there is a very easy way. There are many connectors. So Superset is there for you. And then regardless of the database you're using, MySQL, Postgres, ClickHouse, or it might be something, of the cloud perspective, Snowflake, whatever you have, you have an easy connector. So you launch this, you create a new database, right? And you add your connector and you connect to your data. The minute you do that, you're ready to the next step. So what's the next step? Since I have my database, the whole concept of the superset is that, okay, database is there, you need to define a dataset. So the dataset is the chunk of information that you want to visualize and work with. So the datasets, there are two ways major to do it. One is you can select easily an existing table of your schema, and if the complete table should be visualized, then fine, you select it to define it as a dataset. Or another very nice feature that comes with the Superset platform is that it has its own, let's say, SQL ID, if I may say so. So which actually gives you the opportunity to do queries on your data, filter it, and then create a data set, maybe filtered, maybe with some kind of another perspective on the fly. Another nice feature for all of you who are using Jinja, Superset supports Jinja, so it gives you some boost to your plain SQL, right? So as I said, initially we did the connection with the database. Now we created the data set, which looks something like this when it's ready. And the next step is using your data set. You want probably to move to the next step to create a chart. So once the data set is there, it pops up this kind of view. And if you see here now, the dataset is in. You can see, what data information is available. And this is what I said before, that charting is easy in the sense that it's all buttons and clicks in a sense. Of course, if you want to do more advanced things, you can do SQL behind that. But easily, without any SQL knowledge, already see if you go through the way of using a ready-made table, you don't even have to know any SQL at all, right? And then you select the type of information that you would like to visualize. So you might have multiple columns in your table. If you have calendar columns, time perspective, usually Superset identifies it on its own, and it gives you an option to define the granularity of information you're going to use. For example, if it is time, it might tell you, would you like to see it at the day level, aggregate on the week level, and move on. And of course, you get to define, based on the information you have, the charting options that you want. There is many options there. For us, it was an example of using a time series information and represent data through time. So we selected the time series option, right? And then after you create your visualization, right, the last thing that you do there is you need to add this information, this chart as it is, back to the dashboard. As we saw initially, I showed you a dashboard that has a couple of tabs. In each tab, there was different elements into that. And as we said, we're working with the bottom part of the chart was a time series representation of two series there. So when you create your dashboard, as you see on the screen, you have the option to probably you can add as many tabs as you want. So you have a dashboard with multi-tabs. And again, then in each tab, you get to define which is the tricky part, the number of rows and columns you want to have. The tricky part goes back to the fact that based on the layout you want to create, right, and if you want to have different elements into that, it's a good thing to, before you go into action, to have some kind of a design, how things are going to look like, because once you start building, it would be good to have a sense of what you're building, because otherwise you have to actually scrap it and start from the beginning if your design doesn't fit the column and the rows you were expecting. So in this case, as we see, in our case, it was a very simple thing. So we only added a couple of rows. This is not a column, it's just, and in every row I can add elements, and of course I can actually, resize them to get what I want. So having said that, then the last step you were doing, you will get you back to the original dashboard. So up to now, things looks well. I mean, it has a lot of functionality. You can do a lot of things. It seems to be easy. One thing that let's say for us was, let's say, not a showstopper, but something that we need to invest more and do some extension was, as any solution is not designed for, to fit 100% the purpose that you want to use it. For us, the issue was that Superset is more like in the BI perspective. So it's, viewing your data, but not manipulating your data, which means that what we see on the screen is something we cannot do. So if you have a visualization of your data like a table, right, you're not able to go there and change any elements. And of course, which means that if you want to have, let's say, even some Boolean cells there to, do, let's say, what we said before, approval or change some values, it's not supported in the base core. So of course, this means that it goes back to discussion. It's open source. You can fork it and extend it. And this is where we come into play. And this is what I say when you come into play. So to give the pass to the audience, for us, it's interesting to see people that really, feel close to what we have. And they would like to, join us in this journey to come and talk to us about, how they would like to, join our team and extend Superset and make it, more flexible. So I don't know if I have time for a few questions.
I'm happy to give you some time for some questions. We have 5 minutes before our next talk. I think Antonis is here. Right. Any questions for Argiris and Kivos? Yes, there's one in the back over there. You're doing this on purpose, right? You wanted me to run across.
So, hello. Have you ever tried to data blend datasets from different data sources in the same dashboard? Like, you have an SQL database and no SQL, and you want to data blend in front of Superset?
Yes. I mean, you can have multiple sources and you can define datasets for multiple sources. It's okay. I mean, it's flexible. It doesn't mean that you're bind to a single database. You can have multiple sources feeding your system. Yes. When I define a dataset...
Could you repeat that question, please? Could you repeat that question? No. Could you repeat that question?
Yes. So the question was if I can... So I have multiple sources, I bring different datasets, can I join the datasets? The datasets, the minute they come in, and you can build them virtually, then as we saw through the SQL editor, right, I can manipulate them and create a new, an extra dataset from that. So flexibility is there.
Yes, one more here.
Yeah, hello, thank you on great presentation. Is possible to do this in real time? So example you have from one database and another, you are doing some calculation, but to monitoring that in real time?
You mean if I can have real-time calculations running to update my dashboards?
Yes.
Of course, yes. I mean, it's not a static tool, right? So the concept is that, and that there are multiple ways to do it. For example, you might have your datasets prepared by some, other tool, right? And then you update your dataset, and then the dashboard feeds live from that dataset. If you see what I mean. Yes. Right? Unfortunately, I don't have a live connection here with our systems. Otherwise, I would show you exactly how our systems feed live. But the datasets are not static, neither the dashboards. It's a live system, and also, for example, it supports alerts. Just because of that, because it's a live system, it feeds all the time. So you might want to be alerted about the situation, some of your data that you want to flag to do some action.
And make a decision in real time. Great.
Exactly.
Hi, thanks. Great presentation. How you manage your dashboards at scale? Do you have any kind of versioning for the dashboards, keeping it in code? I mean, when something changes and you have multiple.
Right. So, as I said, we didn't go through the architectural part of the Superset thing, but Superset on its own, of course, it uses a database to store its data. So the default database is a Postgres, right? So everything you do, all the history, I mean, whatever has to do with, the system settings, roles, and everything you do, it goes back to this Postgres database, right? So as long as it's in a database, then you have the option to, work the way you want from that point on, right? And since we mentioned that, Postgres is the default, but there is also an option to, if you want to switch to MySQL, but, this is to bundle that Superset solution.
Argiris, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
And I know you'll be available at your stand